You were told to face your darkness, but no one warned you what happens when you befriend it. Yes, shadow work is powerful, but it is also very dangerous. And if you do it wrong, it doesn't just mislead you, it corrupts you. Shadow work is not self-care. It is not a weekend ritual. It is not meant to make you feel better about who you are. Shadow work is sacred fire. It is violent and raw. It burns the lies. It strips away the illusions. And if you do not come into it with humility, with conscience, with reverence for what you are opening, you do not become whole. You become possessed. That's the word Jung used. Possessed. Not awakened, not healed, not integrated. Possessed. There is something in you that is older than your name. It is the part that hides your rage, the part that smiles while plotting, the part that envies, mocks, and manipulates. And for most people, it stays buried. They distract it, numb it, dress it up with habits and social rules. But you heard it whisper, and you answered. You gave it a seat at the table and called that growth. And in some ways it is. But only if you remember who is the master and who is the servant. You might have faced this during a breakup, maybe after a betrayal, maybe on a night when everything collapsed and the silence in your chest grew louder than your own thoughts. You opened the doors that most people never touch. You read the words of Jung. You heard that the shadow holds your missing pieces, that the dark corners of your soul might be hiding something beautiful. And you believed it. You walked right in, but you did not realize that something far stronger lived in that dark part of you. No one said that the part of you you're trying to heal could just as easily twist you into something unrecognizable. Because once you start feeding that shadow, once you start calling it yours, once you begin to give it shape and language and permission, it does not stay quiet. It grows. It learns your face. It speaks in your voice. And it will tell you exactly what you want to hear while it eats your heart from the inside out. Listen to me. Jung never said to become your shadow. He never said to let it run wild through your personality. He said to know it, to look at it in the eye without flinching, to recognize its hunger without letting it dictate your actions. The shadow was meant to be integrated, not unleashed, to be carried, not worn like some crown. But in this modern age, in this strange digital spirituality, the shadow has been turned into a costume. You've seen it before, or maybe you've even done it once. Someone lashes out, and they call it authenticity. Someone mistreats their partner and blames it on their trauma. Someone adopts the language of inner work, but their heart is still closed, still armored, still full of disdain for anyone who doesn't mirror them. Shadow work was supposed to make us more whole. Instead, it's become a performance of darkness. And that performance feeds the very ego it was meant to humble. That is why there's a sickness spreading in these spaces. It's more like a kind of spiritual cosplay. People adopting different roles: the magician, the warrior, the queen, the wild one, and using them like little masks, not to reveal their truth, but to hide it better. And all of them quote Jung. They know the terms. They throw around words like projection and integration and unconscious bias, but their relationships are still fractured. Their souls are still restless. Their inner world is still ruled by the same old patterns, now dressed in prettier language. And that, my friend, is the danger. The first is that the ego is a fast learner. It studies the language of healing, not to surrender, but to protect its throne. The frameworks meant to liberate become the very tools that defend old patterns. Instead of dismantling illusions, the ego learns how to dress them in therapeutic language. It no longer fears being seen, it fears being questioned. And in that clever disguise, what should have been confessed becomes cleverly rationalized. The second danger is more subtle, but just as corrosive. When pride takes the reins of personal growth, the journey inward becomes a stage. Every insight becomes a performance. Every scar becomes a badge. The heart that was supposed to open becomes guarded by intellect. Instead of softening, the person hardens behind their vocabulary. They mistake complexity for depth, superiority for healing, and end up locked in a prison they've painted as transformation. Now, there are 4 main distortions I've seen, 4 ways that the shadow seduces people who mean well, who want to grow, but who just get lost along the way. The first is the victim cultist. This person uses their pain like a shield. They wrap themselves in trauma, and any attempt to challenge them is seen as a personal attack. They're not healing, no. They are building a fortress of excuses. Pain becomes their identity, and in that identity, no one can touch them. The second is the villain arc hero. They believe they've broken free from society's expectations. They speak their truth, no matter who it wounds. They think cruelty is power. They confuse selfishness with sovereignty. But what they call shadow work is just rebellion without reflection. They aren't embracing depth. They're avoiding accountability. The third is the archetype cosplayer. They've memorized all the labels: king, queen, priestess, lover. But they've done none of the real work. These roles become costumes. They say they're embodying ancient energies, but what they are doing is performing. Spiritual theater, all flair, no backbone. And the fourth is the depth flexor. This one speaks in riddles, avoids simplicity, dismisses anything they don't agree with as low vibration or surface level. They use complexity to create distance, but their depth is nothing but a moat, a way to feel above others while secretly fearing being seen. If you found yourself in any of these, don't shame yourself, but don't excuse it either. The shadow wants to be seen, but it also wants to take over. That's the paradox. It wants integration, but if you're not careful, it will twist that into dominance. That is why self-inquiry is sacred. Not casual, just sacred. So ask yourself the real questions. Am I using spiritual language to avoid changing? Do I feel more love in my life or less? Have I grown more compassionate or just more clever at defending myself? Am I becoming easier to talk to or harder to reach? This work is supposed to open you, make you more human, not more invincible, not more separate. You are not supposed to walk out of your healing harder. You're supposed to walk out softer, kinder, more able to weep, more willing to hold the pain of others. If your shadow work is not making you more loving, then it's not working. It's just rebranding your defenses. And that's where the real warning begins. Because evil doesn't show up in red cloaks and rituals. It doesn't walk in with fire in its eyes. Evil wears your face. It speaks in your voice. It comes through your healing when that healing is centered around ego. That's how it moves. It tells you you're doing the work. It whispers that you are evolving, that no one understands you anymore because you have outgrown them, that you don't need their feedback, that your truth is enough, that your feelings are the only compass you need. And if you listen, if you follow that path long enough, you end up worshiping your reflection. The shadow becomes your God, not the part of you that longs to be whole, but the part of you that wants to be untouchable. And once that happens, you're no longer integrating your darkness. You are being ruled by it. What no one tells you is that healing is boring sometimes. It's humbling. It's messy. Real integration is not a revelation. It's a decision to act differently in the moment when your old self wants to take over. It's apologizing when you want to defend. It's sitting in discomfort when you want to flee. It's listening when your pride wants to speak. True shadow work does not elevate your sense of self. It does not make you feel more powerful, more untouchable, or more important. Instead, it takes you to the ground. It strips away your defenses layer by layer until you are left with only what is real. It does not offer applause. It does not make space for ego. What it demands is honesty so deep it aches. It brings you face to face with moments you would rather forget, not to shame you, but to soften you. Not to expose you for the sake of pain, but to open the parts of you that have been locked behind pride and denial for years. In this place, growth begins not with triumph, but with surrender. It begins when you are finally quiet enough to tell the truth about your own story. Does this work stop at the surface? No, it doesn't. It moves into the memory of every moment you look away from your actions. It asks you to confront how you have caused harm, how you have spoken words that cut, how you have stayed silent when you should have stood up, how you have pretended to be someone you are not. It invites you to speak aloud the parts you once swore would never be revealed. This is not to punish you. It is not to bury you in guilt. It is to end the hiding. It is to make room for a life built on something honest. In that honesty, you are not destroyed. You are rebuilt. Not as someone flawless, but as someone finally willing to be whole. There is beauty in you, so much of it. But that beauty is born in the soil of your honesty. It is not born in performance. It is not born in language. It is born when you stand at the edge of your inner wilderness, trembling, and you choose to walk through anyway. Not because you are sure, but because you're tired of living in fragments. Mind you, this is not a call to fear the shadow. No, there's nothing to fear about the shadow. It is only a call to respect it. To know that what you are dealing with is ancient, that it has survived every attempt you've made to bury it, and that when it sees you coming with real love, not performance or pride, it will start to loosen. It will stop fighting. It will speak. And when it does, it will not sound like a monster. It will sound like a child. One that's been waiting for someone to come close enough to listen. You are not meant to become your shadow. You are meant to carry it, to bind it with conscience, to hold it like a brother who once tried to kill you and now weeps in your arms. That is the alchemy. That is the fire. That is the true work. And so, I leave you with this. Be suspicious of any voice, even the one in your head, that tells you that you are beyond reproach. Be wary of anything that sounds like healing, but leaves you more isolated. And remember, the shadow is not your enemy. But if you treat it like a crown, if you call it holy without first wrestling it to the ground, it will take your face, your name, your voice, and it will speak ruin in the language of growth. Let that never be your path. Let your shadow be transformed, not enthroned. Let it teach you mercy. Let it teach you the truth. And let it bow with you at the altar of becoming whole.